I thought marrying a billionaire would solve all my problems, but 3 months into our fake marriage, I discovered Alexander Stone had enemies who would stop at nothing to destroy him, and now they were coming for me. What happened next would test everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and survival. 6 months ago, I was Elaine Marshall, a struggling retail worker. After a cruel customer slapped me in public, billionaire Alexander Stone stepped in, claiming I was his wife. Later, he offered me a business deal, marry him for 1 year to secure his inheritance, then divorce for $5 million. I said yes, thinking it would be simple. I was so wrong. 3 months into being Mrs. Alexander Stone, I woke up every morning in a penthouse that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. The marble floors were heated, the windows offered a view of the entire city, and my walk-in closet was filled with designer clothes I'd only dreamed of wearing. Yet somehow I still felt like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. The morning routine had become familiar. Coffee from a machine that cost more than my old car, checking my schedule with Marie, Alexander's assistant who'd become my lifeline to understanding this world, and selecting an outfit appropriate for whatever Mrs. Stone was supposed to do that day. Today was the Children's Hospital charity luncheon, which meant the navy Valentino dress and pearl earrings that cost more than I used to make in 6 months. Standing in front of the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The scared retail worker who'd been slapped in a mall boutique had been replaced by someone who looked like she belonged in magazines. But looks, I was learning, could be incredibly deceiving. Alexander had left early for a business meeting, leaving only a note reminding me about the luncheon and that his driver would pick me up at 11. Our interactions had become cordial, professional, exactly what you'd expect from a business arrangement. We played our parts perfectly in public, the devoted newlyweds, always touching, always smiling, always looking like we couldn't bear to be apart. But in private, we were polite strangers sharing the same expensive space. The charity luncheon was held at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, a place so elegant that even the doormen looked like they belonged in a movie. I'd gotten better at these events over the past 3 months. I knew how to make small talk about causes I was genuinely passionate about, how to smile for photographers without looking terrified, and how to navigate conversations with women who'd known Alexander for years and were clearly trying to figure out where I'd come from. What I hadn't gotten better at was ignoring the way my heart raced when Alexander put his hand on my back to guide me through a crowd, or how my breath caught when he leaned close to whisper something in my ear for the cameras. This was supposed to be fake, a business transaction with clear boundaries, but somewhere along the way those boundaries had started to blur, at least for me. The luncheon was going smoothly until I excused myself to use the restroom. I was touching up my lipstick when she walked in. A woman I'd never seen before, but who somehow made the expensive bathroom feel smaller and more dangerous just by being there. She was probably in her early 30s, tall and elegant with platinum blonde hair pulled back in a perfect chignon. Her dress was black and simple but clearly cost a fortune, and she wore diamonds like other people wore casual jewelry. But it was her eyes that made me uneasy, cold, calculating, and focused entirely on me. "You must be the famous Elaine Marshall," she said, her voice smooth as silk but with an edge that made my skin crawl. Or should I say, the infamous Mrs. Stone? I turned to face her, trying to project the confidence I'd been learning to fake. "I'm sorry, have we met?" "Oh, we haven't been formally introduced," she said, stepping closer. "I'm Victoria Blackwood. I'm sure Alexander has mentioned me." He hadn't, but something about the way she said his name, with too much familiarity, too much ownership, told me exactly who she was. This was someone from Alexander's past, someone who clearly wasn't happy about his present. "I'm afraid he hasn't," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How interesting. I suppose there are many things Alexander hasn't told you, like how he was supposed to marry me before you came along." My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I think there might be some confusion." "Oh, there's no confusion," Victoria said, moving even closer. "You see, Alexander and I have been together for 3 years. We were engaged, planning our wedding, building our life together, and then suddenly, without any explanation, he calls it off and marries some nobody retail worker he met in a mall. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Alexander had never mentioned being engaged to anyone. In all our conversations about his past relationships, he'd made it sound like he'd never found anyone worth committing to. But looking at Victoria's perfectly composed face, I could see she wasn't lying. "I'm sorry if you're upset," I managed to say, "but Alexander and I are married now, and—" "Are you, though?" Victoria interrupted. "Really married? Because from where I'm standing, this whole thing seems rather convenient. A mysterious whirlwind romance with someone completely outside his social circle, a wedding with no friends or family present, and a wife who looks utterly terrified every time someone takes her picture." My hands were shaking, but I tried to hide it by gripping the marble countertop. "I don't know what you're implying, but—" "I'm not implying anything," Victoria said. "I'm telling you directly. I know this marriage is fake. I know about the inheritance clause in his grandfather's will, and I know that you're being paid to play this role." The world seemed to tilt around me. How could she possibly know about the inheritance? Alexander had told me it was a closely guarded secret, something only his lawyers knew about. "I can see from your face that I'm right," Victoria continued. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you have a choice to make. You can continue this charade and watch it destroy both of you, or you can take the smart option and walk away now." "Why would I do that?" Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a check. "Because I'm prepared to offer you $10 million to disappear. Double what Alexander promised you, and you get it right now instead of having to wait out the year." I stared at the check, my mind reeling. $10 million. More money than I could spend in several lifetimes. All I had to do was walk away from a marriage that wasn't real anyway. "All you have to do," Victoria said, "is sign a simple document stating that the marriage was a fraud, and this is yours. You can disappear, start over somewhere new, and Alexander and I can fix what you've broken." "And if I don't?" Victoria's smile turned cold. "Then I'll expose the truth anyway. I have evidence, Elaine. Photos, documents, recordings. I can prove this marriage is fake, which means Alexander loses his inheritance and probably faces criminal charges for fraud. Is that really what you want?" I felt trapped, cornered by someone who clearly had resources and connections I couldn't compete with. But something in me rebelled against being threatened, against being told I didn't belong in a life I was starting to love despite myself. "I need time to think," I said. "Of course," Victoria said, tucking the check back into her purse. "You have 24 hours. After that, I go public with what I know." After she left, I stood alone in that bathroom for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My perfect new life was falling apart before my eyes, and I had no idea how to fix it. I returned to the luncheon, but I couldn't focus on anything. Alexander noticed my distraction immediately. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked quietly during the speeches. "Just a headache," I lied, not knowing how to tell him that his ex-fiancée was threatening to destroy both our lives. The rest of the day passed in a blur. That evening, Alexander was working late in his home office, and I paced around the penthouse like a caged animal. I kept thinking about Victoria's words, about the choice she'd given me. $10 million to walk away from a life that wasn't really mine anyway. But then I thought about the past 3 months. The way Alexander had taught me about wine at business dinners, patiently explaining the difference between various vintages without ever making me feel stupid. The morning he'd found me crying over a news story about homeless veterans and had quietly donated $1 million to help them. The night he'd stayed up with me when I had food poisoning, bringing me soup and checking on me every hour even though we barely knew each other. Those moments hadn't felt fake. They'd felt real, honest, like glimpses of who Alexander really was beneath the billionaire facade. And somewhere in those moments I'd started falling for him. But how could I tell him about Victoria without revealing that I was beginning to hope our fake marriage might become something real? How could I admit that the business arrangement I'd agreed to had become the most important thing in my life? The next morning, I made my decision. I called Victoria and agreed to meet her at a small cafe downtown, away from the world where Alexander might see us. "I was hoping you'd be smart about this," Victoria said when I sat down across from her. "I need to know something first," I said. "Why are you doing this? If you and Alexander were really engaged, if you love him, why are you trying to destroy his life?" Victoria's composed mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something raw and painful in her eyes. "Because he humiliated me. 3 years together, and he threw it all away for a fake marriage to a nobody. Do you have any idea what that did to my reputation? My standing in our social circle? So this is about revenge?" "This is about getting back what's mine," Victoria said. "Alexander and I belong together. We understand each other's world. We move in the same circles. We make sense. You're just a temporary distraction. What if he doesn't want you back?" "He will," Victoria said with absolute confidence. "Once you're gone and he's thinking clearly again, he'll realize what he's lost." I looked at this beautiful, powerful woman who had everything I'd ever dreamed of, and I felt something I hadn't expected: pity. She was so focused on what she thought she deserved that she couldn't see what was actually in front of her. "I'm not taking your money," I said quietly. Victoria's eyes flashed with anger. "Then you're making a terrible mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." I left the cafe feeling both terrified and liberated. I had no idea how to fight someone like Victoria, but I knew I couldn't just run away. For the first time in my life, I had something worth fighting for. But Victoria wasn't finished with me. Over the next week, strange things started happening. Photographers seemed to be everywhere I went, taking pictures of me at the grocery store, at the gym, even walking through the lobby of our building. My phone started ringing with calls from reporters asking for comments about my fairy tale marriage. Someone leaked my old address to tabloids, and they ran stories about my previous life, my divorce, my financial struggles. Alexander noticed immediately. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded after the third tabloid story ran. "Why are they suddenly so interested in your past?" I wanted to tell him about Victoria, but I was afraid. What if he chose to handle it by ending our arrangement early? What if he decided I was more trouble than I was worth? "I don't know," I lied. "Maybe someone from my old life sold information to the press." Alexander's expression darkened. "I'll have my security team look into it. This is completely unacceptable." But the media attention was just the beginning. A few days later, I was having lunch with Sarah, a friend I'd made at one of the charity events, when she showed me something on her phone that made my blood run cold. "Have you seen this?" she asked, her voice careful and concerned. It was a photo of me apparently kissing another man outside a downtown hotel. The man was handsome, well-dressed, and completely unfamiliar to me. But the photo looked completely real, like I was having an affair. "Sarah, this isn't what it looks like," I said, my voice shaking. "I've never seen this man before in my life." "I believe you," she said quickly. "But Elaine, this is all over social media. People are saying Alexander's wife is cheating on him." I stared at the photo, trying to figure out how it was possible. Then I realized this was Victoria's next move. She'd somehow created fake evidence of an affair to destroy my marriage from the inside. I rushed home, hoping to explain everything to Alexander before he saw the photos, but I was too late. He was in his office, staring at his computer screen, his face a mask of cold fury. "Alexander!" I started, but he held up his hand to stop me. "Don't," he said, his voice like ice. "Just don't." "It's not real," I said desperately. "Someone faked those photos. I've never even seen that man before." "Really?" Alexander turned the computer screen toward me. "Because I have 5 different angles of this encounter, all taken by different photographers. Are you telling me this is all some elaborate setup?" "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what I'm telling you. Someone is trying to destroy us." Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Destroy us? Elaine, there is no us. This is a business arrangement, remember? You're being paid to play a role, and apparently you've decided to play some additional roles on the side." His words hit me like physical blows. "How can you think that? After everything we've shared, how can you believe I would do this?" "What have we shared?" Alexander asked coldly. "Some polite conversations? A few public appearances? You're an actress, Elaine. A very good one, apparently." I felt tears streaming down my face, but I couldn't stop them. "You don't mean that." "I mean every word. This arrangement is over. I want you out of here by tomorrow morning." "Alexander, please." "My lawyers will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. Don't worry, you'll still get your money. I honor my contracts, even when the other party doesn't." He walked past me toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, you almost had me convinced. For a while there, I actually thought—" He shook his head. "It doesn't matter what I thought." After he left, I collapsed on the sofa and cried harder than I had since my mother died, not just because my comfortable new life was ending, but because I was losing the man I'd fallen in love with. The man who would never believe that I loved him for who he was, not what he could give me. But as I sat there in that beautiful penthouse, surrounded by the life I was about to lose, something shifted inside me. I'd spent my whole life letting other people make decisions for me. My ex-husband had controlled our finances. My retail job had controlled my schedule. Even this marriage had been something that happened to me rather than something I'd actively chosen. But not this time. This time, I was going to fight. I spent the next 2 days investigating Victoria Blackwood like my life depended on it, because in many ways, it did. I used resources I'd never had access to before, private investigators, research services, even some of Alexander's own security team, who'd grown to like me over the past few months. What I discovered was that Victoria was even more dangerous than I'd realized. She'd been planning this destruction for months, hiring photographers, bribing hotel staff, even finding an actor who resembled men from my past to stage the fake affair photos. She had connections in media, business, and society that she was using to systematically destroy my reputation. But she'd made one crucial mistake. In her obsession with destroying me, she'd left traces of her involvement. Financial records showing payments to the photographers, phone records connecting her to the tabloid journalists, even video footage from the hotel showing the staged photo shoot. The problem was, I had all this evidence but no way to get Alexander to listen to me. He'd made it clear that he didn't want to see me or hear from me. His lawyers had already filed the divorce papers, and I was supposed to be out of the penthouse by the end of the week. That's when I realized I needed help from someone Alexander trusted more than me. I called Marie, his assistant, and asked to meet her for coffee. "I know you probably think I'm terrible," I said when we sat down, "but I need you to know the truth." I told Marie everything, about Victoria's threats, about the fake photos, about the evidence I'd gathered. I showed her the financial records, the phone logs, the video footage that proved the whole affair had been staged. Marie listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each piece of evidence. Finally, she sat back in her chair and shook her head. "That woman is absolutely ruthless," she said. "But Elaine, you have to understand, Alexander is completely destroyed right now. He's not thinking clearly." "What do you mean?" "He's been in love with you for weeks," Marie said gently. "Maybe longer. Watching him try to hide it has been painful. When those photos came out, it wasn't just his trust that was broken, it was his heart." "Then help me fix it," I said. "Help me show him the truth." Marie was quiet for a long moment. "There's something you should know about Alexander's past with Victoria. She didn't just break up with him. She left him for his business rival and took confidential information with her. It nearly destroyed his company and definitely destroyed his ability to trust people." "So when he saw those photos of me, he saw his worst fears confirmed, that everyone who claims to care about him is really just using him." I felt my heart breaking all over again, but this time for Alexander instead of myself. "Will you help me?" Marie nodded. "Tell me what you need." The plan we came up with was risky and required perfect timing. Victoria was hosting a charity gala that weekend, an event Alexander would be attending. Using Marie's connections and my evidence, we arranged for everything to come together at once. The night of the gala, I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. I had something better, a room full of people who would witness Victoria's downfall. I waited until the speeches began, then had my evidence delivered to 3 different people simultaneously. The event's photographer, who received proof that Victoria had hired actors for fake photos, the society reporter covering the event, who got financial records showing Victoria's payments to tabloid journalists, and Alexander himself, who received a complete dossier of everything Victoria had done. From my car outside the hotel, I watched through the windows as chaos erupted inside. I saw Alexander studying the documents, his face changing from confusion to understanding to fury. I saw Victoria realizing what was happening as people began staring and whispering. I saw security escorts being called. My phone rang. It was Alexander. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice tight with emotion. "Outside. Don't move. I'm coming down." A few minutes later, he emerged from the hotel and walked to my car. Even in the dim parking lot lighting, I could see the pain and regret in his eyes. "Elaine," he said, getting into the passenger seat. "I'm so sorry." "You don't have to apologize," I said. "You had every reason to believe what you saw." "No, I didn't," he said firmly. "I should have trusted you. I should have listened to you. I let my past cloud my judgment, and I almost lost the best thing that's ever happened to me." "Alexander, I love you," he said, the words coming out in a rush. "I've been in love with you for months, and I was too scared to admit it because I thought you were just counting down the days until you could collect your money and leave." I felt tears starting again, but this time they were tears of relief and joy. "I love you too. I've been terrified to tell you because I thought you'd think I was trying to change our arrangement." "Our arrangement?" Alexander laughed, and this time there was real humor in it. "Elaine, our arrangement stopped being business the first time you made me laugh, the first time you called me out for being arrogant, the first time you showed me that there was more to life than board meetings and profit margins. We sat in that car talking until the sun came up, sharing everything we'd been afraid to say for months, about our feelings, our fears, our hopes for a future that suddenly seemed possible." "So what happens now?" I asked as dawn broke over the city. "Now," Alexander said, taking my hand, "we start over. We do this right. Real courtship, real dating, real choice." "What about the inheritance?" "I don't care about the inheritance," he said. "I care about you. If we lose the money, we'll build something new together." As it turned out, we didn't lose the inheritance. Alexander's lawyers found a clause that validated our marriage regardless of how it started, as long as it was legally binding and based on genuine affection by the end of the required year. Victoria's scheme had backfired completely. By trying to prove our marriage was fake, she'd actually helped us discover it was real. 6 months later, we had our real wedding. Not the small civil ceremony we'd had for legal purposes, but a celebration with friends and family who knew our whole story and loved us anyway. I wore a dress I chose myself, not because it would photograph well or make the right impression, but because it made me feel beautiful and happy. Standing at the altar, looking into Alexander's eyes as we exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, I thought about how far we'd both come, from a fake marriage born out of desperation to a real love built on trust, respect, and genuine partnership. Victoria was noticeably absent from our wedding, having left the city in disgrace after her scheme was exposed. I heard she'd moved to Europe and was trying to rebuild her reputation there. I felt sorry for her in a way. She'd been so focused on what she thought she deserved that she'd destroyed any chance of finding real happiness. As for me, I learned that sometimes the worst moments of our lives really do lead to the best opportunities, that love can grow in the most unexpected places, and that fighting for what you believe in, even when you're scared, is always worth it. The woman who'd been slapped in a mall boutique was gone, replaced by someone stronger, braver, and more certain of her own worth. I was no longer just surviving, I was truly living, and the best part was, I was doing it with a partner who saw me for who I really was and loved me anyway. Sometimes fairy tales do come true, they just don't always happen the way you expect them to.